From the Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
Good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome to Capitol View. Thanks for being with us. A very, very busy week in politics. A flurry of bills filed at the deadline at the state capitol. Plus, Arkansas's junior senator grabs the national spotlight. You'll hear from Senator Tom Cotton this morning in just a little while. And Cotton's successor in the 4th District, Representative Bruce Westerman, joins us in the studio just a little bit later. But we begin with the latest in the ongoing adoption scandal involving State Representative Justin Harris. New reporting in this week's Arkansas Times alleging, among other things, the Harrises believed girls they adopted were possessed and that they ignored multiple warnings not to adopt the children they later rehomed. And joining us this morning, author of those reports, Benji Hardy, glad to have him with us, an Arkansas Times veteran, and also Drew Petrimoulx, our guy up the state capitol. A lot has kept you guys busy today, and a lot of it, Benji, coming from you. I want to start with the genesis of this story. How this present itself to you, and what did you begin to uncover as you moved along?
Sure. Well, the story began, I suppose, about a year or so ago with the news that broke in Northwest Arkansas of an incident of child abuse. And at the time, nobody realized that the child in question was the adopted daughter of Representative Harris. That didn't come to light until Max Brantley at the Arkansas Times got a hold of the police documents pertaining to the criminal case, and then that's how we found out there was a lot more to that story than we initially knew. Yeah,
a lot more, because rehoming is a term that comes up on the forefront. A lot of folks figuring out what that is and perhaps what needs to be done about that. DHS in the adoption process said apparently everything went smoothly for the most part. Is that correct? Or they didn't warn Harris's or anyone of any problems, but apparently the family had warned them about these young girls?
Well, I mean, let's differentiate here between DHSs. There's state-level DHS, there's local DHS, and I spoke with the foster family that had two younger girls who were adopted by the Harrises, and they spoke to me extensively. They said that in multiple meetings with the Harrises were told in 2012 that these girls were not a good fit for their home for multiple reasons, and that children with, that come from a background of that's included abuse really need a lot of hands-on attention and need to be in a home placed with parents who are specially trained to deal with those kids 24/7. But to answer your question, I mean, according to the foster parents, there were also local DHS adoption specialists and caseworkers who attempted to warn the Harrises away from making this choice.
Did you get to a point, too, where, I mean, you've got to confirm this as a reporter, and, your sources come in with great information, but then you've got to back this up. What was the travel like that? What kind of journey was that to back all this stuff up and then realize, I mean, did you get to a point, too, where you realized, man, I've got a lot here to deal with?
Oh, yeah. I mean, our first story we had a cover story that ran a little over a week ago. And then as soon as that news broke, then that's when the sources came flooding in. And that's when the foster family contacted me. And that's when all of these other folks who had contact with this case in some form or fashion, or other people who didn't but are involved in the adoption world, the mental health world. It's just been really overwhelming, the amount of response we've gotten. And
then a lot of response at the state capitol. I mean, your story goes to press, and you get to sit back a little bit, and then Drew Petrimoulx goes to work once this thing hits the stands. Drew, what was the reaction like initially up at the Capitol?
Well, I guess first you have to talk about the interview that we had with Mr. Harris. He had a very brief press conference the first time that he came out and spoke, which I believe was last Friday, a week ago, last Friday. And then he spoke with us more in depth after that. We talked for about a half hour, and when you speak with him, he didn't really think that he did anything wrong. He thinks that he was looking out for the best interests of the kids, may have bitten off a little bit more than he can chew, but as far as giving the children away to the family that he did, he feels like he made the best possible choice with the knowledge that he had at that time, and unfortunately, we saw the things the way they ended up.
The reaction from, I guess, fellow Republicans up there as well as Democrats, what are you hearing?
Well, publicly, you've heard nothing but support. The people that have spoken out about it on the Republican side have said that this is a good guy that had his head in the right place, that maybe took on a responsibility that he couldn't handle. The governor had a press conference which he spoke about it and said that he didn't have all the facts, that he was waiting to get more information and gather more information where he would pass any judgment. But even when you talk to these guys privately, there's not a lot of criticism out there. People really, they like him. They think that he's a good guy that made some maybe poor choices, but even in private conversations with Republicans, there's not much criticism of him.
And you've got to understand, too, and Benji, this is some of the things you uncovered, the babysitter, I guess, involved in this. Some of the conditions, the kids were living in no toys, no furniture in a room, locks, alarms, surveillance cameras. One has to question if that rises to the level of abuse. You talked to child care experts on what they think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we did ask DHS whether that would trigger any sort of abuse investigation, and they said, it might well. But we've begun talking to some folks who know child psychology and therapy and trying to get a handle on what exactly all this means, I suppose. I mean, it sounds like the babysitter's account is definitely troubling, and it's backed up by other sources that we've had who have told me similar things, who are in a position to know that.
People aside, one thing a lot of attention got was this issue of rehoming, where you can apparently adopt a child if things don't go well or there needs to be some sort of a change. I guess privately you can put that child into another home, rehome the child. What was it like when you came across that? Had you heard of that before?
No, frankly, I hadn't. I think most people haven't. I mean, you think you don't think that's a possibility, but there's no statutory barrier in place to prevent that from happening.
And Drew, you got some talk about that up there at the Capitol. I mean, there was some serious action on this, actually.
Well, it's kind of a strange thing because when we give these kids over to parents, we want them to be the parents, and we want them to be a family unit, which for most parents could involve sending your kids to someone else if you think that's a better place for them to live. But I think what the legislation is going to focus on is kids that come from DHS custody because they've been abused before, and you are kind of taking on a little bit different scenario when you adopt those kids, and to think that you could then send them somewhere else, especially when there's state funding involved in this. I think that's where the focus of the legislation is going to be, and I really haven't seen anybody that would be against it, even Mr. Harris himself.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of rationale behind there not being a law specifically to address that already, is that, DHS doesn't get involved if you have kids and you send them to live with your sister for a month, or, your mother, or DHS normally doesn't interject itself into the affairs of families unless there's a reason for them to think that there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting thing, though, I mean, in my conversation with DHS, there was a big national story about rehoming in 2013, and ever since then, they've been looking into this issue. So, I mean, it's not a new issue for them. They just didn't really know exactly how they were going to go about fixing this, because, again, their goal was to treat these treat these families as families, which is a pretty hands-off approach. But I think there's a pretty broad consensus now that there's going to have to be some more oversight.
Benji, this turned out to be the gift that keeps giving for you and keeps you busy. What's next?
Sure.
Anything next on this front?
Yes, frankly. I mean, there's a lot more to be looked at. I mean, it's really opened my eyes, and I think everyone on our staff, to the child welfare system in the state more broadly, and issues that need to be looked into, things that need to be reported on. And it's a lot bigger than just Justin Harris or this particular case. But let me interject just one thing about, as far as other legislators or folks at the Capitol coming to Representative Harris's defense, I get that, I think, in part because it's such a personal issue, and people work with the guy and know the guy personally, and I'm not criticizing that, but I do think when you look at the response that this story has gotten online from people across the political spectrum, it's not a Republican versus Democrat issue. It's just, it's really attracted a lot of outrage and momentum because people just respond viscerally very poorly to the idea of giving away children.
Well, sure. And Drew, you can get as much support from your colleagues at the state capitol as you want, but ultimately when it comes down to re-election, it's going to be the voters who decide. Is he going to survive this?
Well, I mean, the fervor online is definitely something that's real, and I'm sure he's hearing it back in his home district. You'll have to see. So far, he's kind of maintained a low profile as far as what he plans to do for the future. And again, you haven't heard any Republicans calling for him to resign or even say that he's not fit to hold office at this time. So as long as he has the support of his fellow Republicans and you know, some support back home, doesn't seem like there's anything immediately that would be forcing him to give up his seat or not seek re-election.
All right, gentlemen, thanks very much. Benji Hardy, Arkansas Times, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to more reporting on this and other things. Drew Petrimoulx, thank you for your time this morning. Guys, have a great weekend. Coming up after a quick break, Tom Cotton stirs up nationwide controversy over Iran, why he says he and 46 other GOP senators were right in letting the regime know a nuclear deal with the Obama administration may not last. You're watching Capitol View on this Sunday morning.
I just enjoy the fact that they make me feel like family. I know that I can trust them. I'm on a very tight budget, so it's very, very affordable for people like me. In Discount Tire and Brake, their customer service is amazing. They'll take care of me right then and there. I get my Michelin tires from Discount Tire and Brake. I'm getting the exact same product from Discount Tire and Brake, but I get better service and I get trusting service. They will not let you down. I know that the work is done correctly, and I know that my family's going to be safe.
Chevy trucks always find new roads to conquer. We started with the family of the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road. And now, introducing the pickup that unanimously won the 2015 Motor Trend Truck of the Year. All made of high-strength steel, only at one place, your Chevy dealer. Now during Silverado Truck Month, get a total value of $7,750 on select Silverado 1500s in stock the longest. It's Silverado Truck Month at your local Chevy dealer.
Yoplait, with a smooth and creamy taste your whole family loves. Don't miss Yoplay's exciting new flavors. Creamy caramel and cookies and cream.
Ferguson's Furniture in Benton sells the very best leather furniture, all made in America and made to last for years and years. Styles, colors, and comfort you won't find anywhere else. Ferguson's is the exclusive dealer for this fine line of leather furniture. You always get the very best deal, and you can finance interest-free up to 60 months. Ferguson's delivers statewide. Check our website, fergusonsfurniture.com, or come to our store for the best selection of fine quality leather furniture. Ferguson's Furniture, next to Walmart in Benton.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to Capitol View, everyone. Senator Tom Cotton in the national spotlight this week after he led Senate Republicans in a controversial letter to the leaders of Iran. Mr. Cotton, one of 47 GOP senators, writing to the Iranian regime, explaining that current U.S. negotiations towards a nuclear agreement may not last after President Obama leaves office. The U.S., one of several countries working to keep Iran from having the capability to build a nuclear weapon. A handful of prospective presidential candidates signed the letter, but it has also drawn widespread criticism.
I think it's somewhat ironic to see some members of Congress wanting to make common cause with the hardliners in Iran.
The recent letter from Republican senators was out of step with the best traditions of American leadership. Either these senators were trying to be helpful to the Iranians or harmful to the commander-in-chief in the midst of high-stakes international diplomacy.
7 Republican senators opted not to sign the letter. Some have expressed concern it will have the opposite effect on these nuclear talks. Senator Cotton says he simply has one goal in mind: keep Iran from having nuclear capability. He joined KRK earlier this week.
Well, this letter that 46 other Republicans joined me in signing to the leadership of Iran is simply designed to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Any Iran expert will tell you that Iran's leaders don't necessarily understand their constitutional system. They need to know that if Congress doesn't approve a deal, Congress won't accept a deal. And Congress will not accept any deal that allows Iran to develop nuclear weapons. Not today, not tomorrow, not 10 or 15 years from now.
So if this nuclear negotiation does fall through, do you believe that we move closer, the U.S. moves closer to war with Iran?
Not necessarily. We do need to have a credible threat of military force against Iran. The president has said that himself. But the alternative, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said last week, to a bad deal is not war. The alternative is a better deal, a deal that tightens sanctions, that confronts and challenges Iran, which is aggressively expanding throughout the Middle East, and forces them to reach the only solution acceptable to the United States and our allies, which is complete nuclear disarmament.
Mr. Cotton says he takes issue over the possibility of a nuclear deal sunsetting after 10 years. He favors tightening already stringent sanctions on the regime. State lawmakers working this week to remove an obstacle in the event that Senator Cotton makes a run for president. A Senate committee advanced a measure that would allow a candidate to run for 2 offices at once. For example, if Senator Cotton wanted to run for president in 2020, he could do so while seeking re-election for his Senate seat. Right now, of course, that's not allowed in the state of Arkansas. And this week marked the deadline to file bills for the session. More than 300 were turned in the last minute. Among them, a new bill aimed at religious protection once again draws accusations of anti-gay discrimination. This one focuses on wedding-related businesses. For example, a baker who doesn't want to make a cake for a same-sex wedding. The bill's sponsor says the government should not force people to do things that violate their religious beliefs, but opponents see parallels to arguments used against ending racial segregation.
People didn't want to let African Americans eat at the lunch counter by that same argument.
I don't think that's a fair comparison, and if anybody is saying that, I think they've taken it to the extreme, and I think that they're taking it out of context.
Opponents also worry the bill allows people to discriminate against a broad array of groups in various transactions under the guise of religious beliefs. Daylight saving time could become a thing of the past here in Arkansas if new legislation becomes law. Representative David Meeks filing a bill ending the practice of rolling the clocks back in the fall and forward near the start of spring. Meeks says technology has made daylight saving time obsolete and that he's gotten a lot of support. Hawaii and Arizona are the only states that don't observe daylight saving time currently. When we come back, the 4th District new Congressman hard at work. Hear Bruce Westerman's plans for health care and his thoughts on his colleague Tom Cotton. We've got a Capitol View on this Sunday morning.
It's coming.
You better board up the windows.
Something big.
There's thunder. Boom! Lightning!
And happy.
Too much laughing, trying too hard.
This Tuesday, the return of last summer's hit, Undateable.
Did I hear spanking? Briefly, but I asked her to stop.
And from Ellen DeGeneres, the new comedy, One Big Happy.
So you're the wife? Oh, no, I'm his wife. I'm his lesbian best friend. She's having his baby.
I'm just gonna make you think I wrote that down.
Big Happy Tuesday. This Tuesday after The Voice here on NBC.
It's Family Leisure's Factory Direct Patio Sale.
Spring is just around the corner. Shop now for the largest selection. Hundreds of in-stock sets. Buy today, enjoy it tomorrow. Nobody beats Family Leisure.
Wow, something sounds sweet here. Need a little honey in the bowl.
That's good. Oh, yeah.
No, must be the honey.
Does the smell of a freshly bound presentation fill you with optimism? Do you love your wireless keyboard more than certain family members? Is your success due to a filing system only you understand? Could you and your portable printer inspire a buddy movie?
If so, you may be gear-centric.
Someone who knows that the right office gear helps you do great things. And there's one place that has it all. Office Depot Office Max. Gear up for great.
If you've been injured in a car accident, wouldn't it be great to know there's someone who's ready to help?
Here, let me do that.
Someone who can handle it all, so you don't have to. Experts at getting you the benefits you deserve. At the Wren Law Firm, we've got your back. Just call 523-1000, and we'll handle the rest.
Wren Law Firm, 523-1000.
For over 26 years, McGrew Electric Service Company has served Central Arkansas, providing generator and electrical needs big or small. Call us today to see why our customers have voted us #1. McGrew Electric Service Company, home of the world's greatest electrician.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View, everyone. One of Arkansas's freshman Congressman, Republican Bruce Westerman, joining us after serving as his party's first majority leader in the Arkansas House in 130-plus years. He ran for and won the 4th Congressional District, now represents Arkansas and Washington, D.C. Joining us this morning. Good morning, Congressman. Thanks for taking some time out to be with us.
Good morning, Bob. It's great to be here. Great to be back in Arkansas for a little while.
Yeah, now that everything's thawed.
Yeah, a little bit of rain.
A little bit of rain, but no snow, no freezing temperatures.
Right.
It's been
Spring
cold
is in the air, though.
It is, and it's been cold up in D.C. What's the transition been like? Going from
The transition has been pretty smoothly. You know, it was great preparation to serve in the Arkansas legislature. Things are somewhat different in D.C., but I can't think of a better training ground than to serve in the legislature before going up and serving in Congress.
Excellent. First thing I want to talk about is it's a bill. One of your first bills that you decided to put forth up there was a work requirement for Medicaid recipients. What was that, and why did you choose that as your first bill?
Well, that's something that a lot of states have tried to get from the federal government, with flexibility to create a workforce requirement for people who are receiving benefits. Particularly on this one, it's Medicaid benefits for able-bodied working-age adults. You know, with the private option in Arkansas, there are about 40% or 80,000 people who are getting those benefits who have zero income. So other states have asked for waivers from the federal government to create work requirements. The federal government has denied those, so we just introduced a law that would take the Department of Health and Human Services out of the equation. It would put it into statute that if a state wanted to introduce workforce requirements, they could design those, implement them, and the federal government wouldn't have a say in it. So
and we define the workforce requirements.
Well, that could be defined by the state. This is more just to give the states flexibility to implement workforce requirements. It doesn't force them to have workforce requirements. It just gives them the opportunity to implement workforce requirements if they so choose, and they could make those requirements, you know, however they wanted to design them. You're
spending a lot of time in the budget.
Yeah.
And you know, when you say budget, to a lot of people, they're thinking I'm about to doze off here. But you're a guy who gets into these things, into minutiae of finances and stuff like that. What's it like once you start taking a look at a budget, the budget for the United States, and you get in the weeds on something like that?
You know, there are a lot of weeds to get in. You know, you're talking about $3.5 trillion in expenditures. That is a lot of zeros. And even when you go by department and look at where the expenditures are, you're mainly just hitting the high points when you're talking about that large of a budget. But I've spent a lot of time in committee learning about the budget, which also helps you to learn how the federal government operates. I'll be very busy this coming week in budget committee markups. Those will go most of the day and part of the night as the House works to get a budget. So we can meet with the Senate and go through budget reconciliation, which is a whole other process that allows us to hopefully get our fiscal house on a path to being in order.
You know, if you take a look at someone's bank statement, you can learn a lot about them. Their spending habits, what they're spending it on. What are you learning about the spending habits of the United States government?
I'm learning that we've spent way too much for way too long, and the results of that are an $18 trillion debt. The results of that are over on our mandatory spending side, where 2/3 to 3/4 of all the spending takes place. A growing component of that is interest on the debt. It's up to $270, $280 billion a year, and if we don't get it under control, we're on a path for that to be the single largest expenditure of the federal government by 2025, between $900 billion and $1 trillion per year. That's 1/3 of the federal tax revenue that's taken in.
Yeah, and when you talk about dollars like that, I mean, that's just in the stratosphere for a lot of folks try to get their head around. Something that's the expenditure up there, that's something that you're moving on, is a federal pensions benefit recalculation plan.
This is something that the Congressional Budget Office, they did a study on ways to reduce deficit spending, ways to get towards a balanced budget. This was one of the recommendations, and what it does is simply changes the formula on how federal retirement benefits are calculated. It doesn't affect anyone in the military. It's just for federal employees and civil service employees. And just by making the retirement amount based on the highest 5 years of income versus the highest 3 years of income, it can save several $1 billion over a 10-year budget cycle. And you know, we're looking at a lot of programs like that and a lot of policy like that, but it's going to take some major structural reforms to get our federal budget back in balance and to eventually be able to attack this huge debt that we've got.
Getting away from the budget and some of the work at hand, some of the things that have been happening up there, getting a lot of attention. One of those, Senator Tom Cotton sending a letter, open letter to the regime in Iran, telling them that no matter what kind of a deal they come up with, nuclear or otherwise, it's not going to stand, as far as he and 46 other senators are concerned. What's your take on that?
Well, it's obviously their prerogative. That's you know, treaties have to be approved by the Senate. That was a letter from Tom and 46 other senators. So, and that comes on the heels of the speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu in the House chamber, which I will say was one of the most powerful speeches I've ever been associated with. You could feel the electricity in the room. I thought he came out and made a very clear and concise message about how we can't afford to have a nuclear-armed Iran. He read tweets from the Ayatollah talking about how they wanted to annihilate Israel. And he reminded us that in the Holocaust, there were 6 million Jews that lost their lives, but in World War II, there were 60 million people, and the point he made was that Iran won't stop at Israel. The rest of the world has to take note of what Iran's doing. And he also made a great point, I think, talking about the turmoil that currently exists in the Middle East with Iran and ISIS and Syria. And he said, this is a case where your enemy's enemy is your enemy. And I thought that was a really straightforward and concise way to put it, that when that turmoil is complete, whoever comes out on top, or if they merge together, they're still going to be the enemy of Israel, and I believe be the enemy of the United States.
All right, that's all the time we have for this morning. Congressman Westerman, thanks very much for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Anytime.
Enjoy your weekend home.
Thank you.
We'll be right back to wrap things up after this. You're watching Capitol View on this Sunday morning.
A promise was made, a promise that hit the beaches of Normandy, a vow that captured Iwo Jima, a contract that weathered Tet, a pledge that stormed the desert in Iraq, an IOU that braved IEDs in Kandahar. A promise was made to America's veterans. DAV fights to keep that promise, so all veterans and their families get the benefits and support they earned. For help, visit DAV.org.
The prices are amazing. I only paid $37 for my glasses.
I got 2 pairs of glasses for $99. Plus, they were ready in an hour.
All frames are backed by a 1-year warranty. Bifocals starting at $57.
I got 2 pairs of no-line bifocals for $99.
It's so easy. I couldn't be happier.
Success Vision has it all.
2 pairs for $99 in an hour for less. Promise the day, Success Vision Express.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Well, that does it for today's show. Certainly don't forget you can stay up to date with Arkansas politics by following us on Twitter at Capitol View AR and download the Capitol View smartphone app in the iTunes App Store and Google Play. We're back next week with another broadcast. Have a great rest of your weekend and a great week, everyone.
Come into Captain D's for a variety of fresh-made seafood meals, like our 12-piece butterfly shrimp or Southern-style whitefish. Also, try our new crab bites and our fish and crab bites meal. For full meals at just $4.99, it's gotta be D's.
Enjoy more restful sleep, relieve sore muscles, reduce stress. How about coming home to a hot tub from Townley? Hot Spring Spas feature the Ace saltwater system. It's virtually hands-free water care. Townley offers free-flow spas with plug-and-play technology, priced as low as $3,500. Fill it up, plug it in, and enjoy. Experience the Sound of Savings event. Get a free $1,500 Bluetooth music system.
Ah, Townley.
Finally in charge at Spa Auto Sales, one of the most established and trusted dealers around for over 30 years. The home of can-do financing, low down and low monthly payments. I am the big man at Spa Auto Sales.
Hey, what are you doing? Get back to work.
Arkansas runs deep in you. You pitch in when your neighbors need you. Arkansans are known for our generosity. Imagine if there were a way to focus your giving to achieve the results your community needs. Arkansas Community Foundation provides tools to help you protect, grow, and direct your charitable dollars. We know that Arkansans have a heart for giving. The Community Foundation is here to help generous people like you.
Come into Captain D's for a variety of fresh-made seafood meals, like our 12-piece butterfly shrimp, or